Alrighty, team. Welcome to NIL Office Hours. New day and new time. Why? Because we spent yesterday, which was a travel day for the three of us, where we were on Monday. We had the opportunity to speak in front of Queen Creek School District. It was 3 high schools, and it was NCAA compliance about the whole recruiting process. And we had an opportunity to talk about NIL. Well, actually, Coach had an opportunity to talk about NIL. There was a brief introduction by Aaron and myself because the highlight of the show was about Coach Bronkhorst. And he's going to go ahead and get into it. What I really want to find out right off the bat was, one, we have a big shout out to the school district, to Queen Creek. Thank you very much for having us there. We met some incredible people. Secondly, thank you to Brad Moore at Bernstein Wealth Management for orchestrating this and organizing it. And then the dark horse for me, Coach and Aaron, was Chaz Freely.
Yep.
He's actually going to be on our show, on our podcast, and he was actually one of the very first athletes who we've actually had an opportunity to talk to that experienced NIL from the onset, from when he was at Arizona State, jumped in the portal and went to the University of Colorado and played for Prime. So, Coach, what was one of your big takeaways? By the way, team, Coach's presentation was just upper deck home run. It was absolutely magnificent and remarkable. So big kudos to you, Coach. Thank you so much for leading the charge. What was your big takeaway?
I think, the big thing is, first of all, thanks for the kind words. It was just, being in front of a group of coaches and families and athletes and just kind of walking them through the process for the state of Arizona. And some of the things that they may not have understood or knew about the process. And when I was talking with the athletic director, one of the things that came out was, he doesn't have, the coaches and administrators don't have time to answer all of these questions that these families have about this process. Right. And so one of the things that, that I came away with is they're looking for a group like this that they can navigate and direct people to and say, hey, you need to go speak with them because they can answer all of your questions about this entire NIL revenue sharing process, and which was encouraging to hear. And it does not surprise me, though, that hearing from an athletic administrator say, I don't have time to be able to answer all of these questions and run the athletic department of the school district.
Right.
And so now you put that into a head coach who is, obviously a head coach of his team, is probably teaching a full load of classes. And then on top of that is trying to manage this as well. So, being able to take that burden and off their shoulders to where this is an opportunity, an avenue for families to be able to reach out to us and ask us the questions so we can help them navigate the process of what they can and cannot do in the state of Arizona.
Right. So at the end, Aaron was kind enough to head out to the audience with the microphone with Brad, and we opened up the floor for Q&A, but there were very few questions, which leads me to believe one of two things. One, you answered all the questions in your presentation, which was remarkable. Or two, there's still a lot of unknown where these parents and athletes are a little confused and probably a little shy to ask questions because they might think that it comes off as a stupid or dumb question, which is a big error. What's your thoughts on that?
No, I think that's very valid. I think a lot of times when it comes to a topic of unknown, and that's what this is, where the families do not have, a good majority of them do not understand the process.
Right.
And so they don't, like you said, they don't want to sound like an idiot asking a question.
Sure.
And so I think there's a lot of hesitancy in that because they're like, I don't want to ask that question because I don't want to sound like a fool or ignorant or whatever. And so I think it's just the great unknown. I don't believe that I answered every one of their questions at all. I think it's more of being microphone shy and also just the great unknown. And they got loaded with a bunch of information that they had to digest. And I think that eventually what will happen is that folks will start reaching out. They'll start reaching out to the district and saying, hey, do you have the contact information for Blueprint Blue Chip? And how do we get a hold of them? Because we've got a ton of questions and, that sort of thing. And I think that's ultimately what will happen.
Yeah. Aaron, this one's for you. We earlier in June, Aaron and I took off to Iowa. Aaron, you might want to mute this and then I'll mute it when I ask the question, so we're going to get the feedback. We had an opportunity to go out to Iowa to talk to athletic directors and coaches, and since we have met Coach Bronk and brought him into the fold, I can't help but think about how much more successful our meeting would have been in Iowa with you, Coach, joining us. But that's okay; it's going to happen another time. Aaron, you're up in Utah with your kids. Your daughter just graduated. She's not going to be playing softball at the next level, but now you have a son who's a junior. As a parent, what are your concerns? What are your questions? And what are your comments for NIL as far as the high school? Because it's going to bleed into Utah. What is going to be your angle with Jake's dad?
Well, my angle is going to be Jake's mom, and mom's run the household here. So that's the angle. No, I think the big thing is I want to make sure, and we talked about this at the presentation, and I think the whole foundation of Blueprint to Blue Chip is I want my kid to know his worth far exceeds any NIL deal that he will ever receive. So I think I talked about it in my presentation, like NIL has put a price tag on it. And where I get really concerned with these young men and women, they're very young. My son's 16. He's fun. This is fun. He likes high school football. He wants to play at the next level. We got to keep it fun. We've got to keep it not about a job. We've got to keep it where he enjoys it. He loves it. He likes being with his teammates. And that his worth far exceeds any NIL deal. So if he wants to do any of that stuff, what does that look like? And he has to want to do it. I'm not going to run around and be posting stuff for him and doing this, that, and the other. Like, this is his boat to drive. And how do we as parents, I think, ensure that we're really keeping them as kids and allowing them to grow and experience life. So that's my big takeaway and big concern is for, I think, all parents is we already have a sports performance culture that is based on stats, highlight reels. I mean, these kids are inundated. And so then when you start to hear the worth and the value, I really do worry about where this could take young men and women just from a mental health standpoint. And to hear from somebody on the inside that's actually experienced it, oddly enough, that's kind of been through it, saw it kind of when it started with Jace Feely, is, what he talked about is, I don't know if this is enhancing the overall culture on these football teams because everybody knows what everybody's making. And so the cohesiveness of what makes teams great, why people like to play sports before, his dad played on the Michigan national championship team with Tom Brady, Desmond Howard, and he just was sharing with me in private comments, and we're definitely going to have him on, just like his dad's so sad because what made that so great was the team environment, that you were working together, not, Tom Brady's making X, Desmond Howard's making Y, you're making Z. And, I would say we need to, it's great that these kids are getting paid, but I think there's a lot of warning bells that should be sounding around what this could do that we're losing sight of.
Yeah, we know what Arizona is offering. We haven't bled into, one of the next states that we're looking to enter, and I don't want to say conquer or conquest, it's a conquest, but to really kind of embrace the process in Utah. What are your thoughts on the NIL? Coach, what's your insight on what's going on in Utah as well as high schools across America right now with NIL? And how is that going to change the landscape of both the focus of these athletes as well as the recruiting process?
Yeah, I mean, and I'll be honest with you, just perfectly transparent. I have not studied Utah at this point. I've been focused on some other states that I'm working on. But the thing that when it comes to the high school level, which is more my specialty, is that it's like I was mentioning to the coaches on Monday night. I mean, it's the Wild Wild West because you have you have 50 states, and you have 45 different sets of rules, because some of the states just don't have NIL. And so that's the thing, is that we don't have one uniform set of rules for. So, and I got in a spirited debate the other day with my brethren here in the state of Texas, because Texas has a very limited NIL, which is, they've got to use up, you got to be 17 years old. They've got to use up their eligibility before they can tap into their NIL, but it's, that money's going to be stored away until they're done. And what's happening is that we're seeing kids leaving the state of Texas now to go to states to be able to cash in their NIL. And what I said, the state better wake up to this, because the days of I'm playing Texas high school football is not going to carry the same weight as it used to, because the almighty dollar is going to win that 9 times out of 10.
Sure.
If you get a family who might be economically challenged, and I'm not saying that to be ugly, but they're families that are economically challenged. If their son or daughter can go to the state of Louisiana, go to the state of Georgia, and cut a deal for $1 million or $500,000 or $250,000, they're packing up and moving.
100%.
And so, the argument was, well, that's going to kill small town football here in the state of Texas. And I said, hey, listen, I'm not saying it's right, and I'm not saying, that but that's the reality. And we better wake up and start understanding that, playing football, high school football in the state of Texas does not have the same shine on it as it used to. Right. If we're not going to allow these high school athletes to, take advantage of their NIL where other states are. And so, and like I said, to be fair, I'm transparent. I have not studied Utah yet. It is on my list, honestly. Like Colorado is on my list, but I've got a couple other states that I've been working on. It's if we don't have a uniform set of rules eventually developed, and I'm not saying the federal government has to get involved in this, which, if that happens, all bets are off. But these state organizations and the national organizations are going to have to get together and say, hey, we have to have a uniform set of rules. It's kind of like the National High School Federation. A lot of states utilize that set of rules for their contests. I think the same thing can be done when it comes to NIL and,
sure.
and revenue sharing. Well, not necessarily revenue sharing, but more NIL. That, hey, these are the set of rules that we are implementing that every state association is going to agree upon. And it can be done. It can be done easily. The thing is that there are so many state leaders and district leaders whose heads are in the sand, who don't think, oh, my kids are never going to be good enough to be able to handle, take NIL. And the thing is that they don't have to be a 5-star Division I athlete to land an NIL deal. If the local car dealership wants to give the quarterback, $10,000 to be the face of their auto dealership, and come out there and shake hands on a Saturday, that's going to happen. And It doesn't mean that they're going to go off and do that in college. And so I just think that there's a lot of ignorance when it comes to this topic at the high school level. And that's why the education process is a big time thing for me at the high school level and the sub-high school levels of educating these families, educating these coaches and athletic administrators and school administrators that here's the process. And this is what you have to understand about the process and why it's important to know the rules of your state and those sorts of things. So I'm excited about this journey. And I think it's going to be a journey that's going to be ever evolve every single day, every single week, every single month, and every single year.
Perfectly said. Fair. Aaron, I'm going to ask you a question, then Coach, I'm going to come back to you and ask the same question with a little bit more layers on it. Aaron, NIL at the high school level, is it an attraction or a distraction for these athletes, families, and coaches?
Well, I'm probably going to say the unpopular opinion. I think it's a distraction. I do. I think until you can get it regulated and there's some uniformity to it. I get the college thing. That's a high revenue generating, especially football, for those schools. I understand that. I love my son. I love his football team at Brighton High School. Shout out Bengals. Let's go. But they're not generating a bunch of revenue for the school. And so I just think we have to reframe it of what do the kids really get out of it. But I think there has to be some, as Coach said, some uniformity, because right now it's all over the place for what happens. And what people don't realize, and this was really pointed out, is what you do in high school can affect what happens in college. And so you don't get like freebies in high school and then all of a sudden you have to follow the rules in college. That's not how this goes. So I think it's a distraction. I really do. And I think it's a distraction.
Got it, Coach. Same question, but I'm going to add some layers on that. Do you think that NIL at the high school level is an attraction or a distraction, especially with opportunity costs that these kids have to focus on academics? They have to focus on other things. So they have to focus on training. They have to focus on the incidentals. But if they have an opportunity or obligation to go shake hands at a dealership like you're talking about, it's going to take away from their studies as well as from the weight room. What are your thoughts? Is it an attraction or a distraction?
No, I think it's kind of going off what Aaron was saying about the culture. It can be. I think it very well could be a culture killer, because I look at just 4 or 5 short years ago. I mean, kids who were posting their offers on Twitter, on Instagram, and what that was doing in the locker room. That was causing schisms in the locker room because teammate A over here, who's the starting quarterback or starting wide receiver, has 17 offers, and I'm a offensive lineman who I don't have jack,
right?
But I'm keeping this guy upright every night, and so now you add the element of this guy now is the face of the local car dealership or the local fast food place or whatever, and he's getting paid to do that, and no one's coming knocking on my door because I don't play the sexy position. I'm just a grunt offensive lineman.
Right.
And so what happens is that their animosity is already in high school.
Yeah.
I mean, it just permeates in high school. And so now you add the immaturity level of that, at the high school level, it can be a culture beat, which is already difficult for coaches already in developing culture. And now you add the element of high school athletes making money.
Yep.
I'll tell you this: I retired at the right time, because I would not want to deal with that issue. If the state I were coaching in had that opportunity, and especially if they're going out and doing it on their own, and that's just the crazy thing right now. And so I think it's going to be more of a distraction. Now I'm going to throw something on the other side of it though, and even though you technically by rule are not allowed to do it, but there's always workarounds. You can get good really quick. If you're a struggling program, and you have a very active underground booster network, you can get good really quick by having the ability to offer NIL through local businesses that your group is tied to. And so, I mean, it's happened. It's happened everywhere before NIL even showed up. Is that, hey, here's stud receiver over in the next county over. Let's get mom and dad a job in the district. Yeah. And next thing you know, he's transferring over schools, and it's like, he's not transferring over for athletic reasons because dad is now an assistant coach and mom is now the athletic secretary.
Right.
or whatever, or the principal or whatever. And so, I mean, that type of stuff has been happening for generations.
Sure.
Now you add the element of paying kids, and it's like all of a sudden, this kid has got a great setup at this car dealership, and I use car dealership because it's just the easiest thing. And he's got a $10,000 check, and he wasn't getting anything in his previous school, and now he's playing for mine. He's now in my program.
Yep.
So yeah, I mean, I think ultimately it's going to be a huge issue for high school coaches as time goes on.
No question. Aaron, were you going to add something?
Well, I think just that undercurrent of we're going to pay players to move over to our school that can't be done technically under the current rules, but the skirting of that, again, what's the standard we're setting for our young athletes as we break the rules again for what? A high school championship. I mean, this is where it's like we need to have who's the adult in the room or adults in the room that are going, how is this benefiting our kids? How does this benefit them? And if that's at the focal point of how do you build a brand, how do you build a personal brand, how do you be an entrepreneur, how do you build a business? Okay, I can kind of get behind that. What's currently going on is not that.
Agreed.
Absolutely. Hey, Coach, question for you regarding now as NIL makes its way into the high school market. Let's peel back. Now to our audience, none of us can give financial advice. These are purely just financial questions that I'm concerned about. What's the probability of some of these kids going bankrupt before they even hit the age of 20, right? And destroying their credit because they don't understand that they're going to have to file taxes. They are a 1099, not a W-2. There's one. Two, what about the tax implications regarding the families that won't be able to claim their student athlete, or will they be able to claim them as a dependent?
Yeah, I mean, as long as the families are, if the families are able to still claim the student athlete as a dependent, then anything that income the student makes is taxable, and it goes on the family's tax returns. And so, and I think Jace, he brought up a tremendous example of where they're using NIL to offset scholarships.
Right.
And these kids are not realizing that's income, taxable income now. And so that $70,000 that they got is not $70,000 tax-free like the scholarship is. And so now they're paying taxes on that, and they don't realize it, so they never save for it. And next thing you know, they're in a bad spot because now they're having to pay taxes on a $70,000 income that they received. But going back to your original point, by the age of 20, yeah, you can have a number of families, and you can have a number of kids who are in a terrible financial position because they didn't go through the review process. They didn't have checks and balances of talking to a legal professional, talking to a tax professional. And that's one of the points that I hit on a couple times on Monday night is before you sign anything, go through your review process, go through your review check, ask the questions, get your legal advice, taken care of, get your tax advice taken care of, because any deal that cannot serve, any deal that you get that can't survive a 24-hour review process, you don't need to sign.
That's right.
And so make sure all your I's are dotted and T's crossed before you sign that, because once you sign that, before and you haven't reviewed and haven't got all that stuff taken care of, you're now opening yourself up to a lot of issues.
Sure.
Well, and didn't somebody bring up this too? Is this can also affect your financial aid and what you're eligible for?
Yeah, because the financial aid is tied to your tax return, and so if this is part of your family's tax return, and dad makes $90,000, mom makes $90,000, and you brought in $120,000, there's a good chance you're not getting a whole lot of financial aid now. You're not getting a lot of the packages that are available to you because you got a combined $400,000 or $300,000 of income now. And so, I mean, there are a lot of implications that families don't realize when it comes to this whole process.
Yep.
Coach, you for our audience that's listening that wasn't there, you mentioned, and I found this very intriguing. You mentioned points of contention where you could get into an NIL deal here in high school that could follow you to college. What are the pros and cons of that?
Well, I mean, the big thing is, like you said, high school contracts can follow to athletes in college now, because of the when it came to the House settlement agreement, in 2025, and so the current NCAA guidance requires now that Division I qualifying athletes must report third-party NIL deals of $600 or more. But also, if you have an aggregate of $600 or more, if you're doing business with one single payer who's paying you in $200 increments, well, if you get paid 3 times, that's $600. And so that adds up. And so what happens now is that you have to report that. And it starts their junior year in high school, or July 1st, 2025, whichever one was later. So obviously, as we're pushing forward into 2026 and into 2027, it becomes junior year in high school. And so what happens now is that, I got this great NIL deal that's carried me through high school, but 14 days before I start full-time college classes, I have to report that income to NIL Go.
Okay.
Or before my first Division I contest, whichever one comes first. And so that agreement that you entered into in high school now later may become part of a college compliance review. And so that contract you sign in high school could follow you into the college compliance system. And so you have to be aware that if I'm an actual true Division I prospect, these deals that I'm entering into starting my junior year, I have to be aware of the ramifications that could have on my eligibility moving forward into college.
Sure.
It's going to come under scrutiny.
Yep.
And so those are things that's why the safest response to all that is the 24-hour rule process of reviewing all of that information so you don't get yourself into that pickle. Yep,
100%. Aaron, you are the creator of the Caddy framework. How do you feel like that? Let's go through each one in our final 3 minutes here. Character over clout, accountability over excuses, integrity over image, and or discipline over motivation, and integrity over image. How does that apply to these high school athletes and their families, do you think, with NIL?
I think number one, if I'm giving advice to parents, is stay focused on who is your child. Who do you want your child to be? What are their big long-term goals? Football, that's one piece of it. Yes, you want them to excel and be excited, but focus on them, who they are. They have to have good grades. You can't, if you don't get good grades, you're never going to even be eligible to go play in the NCAA. There's a lot of factors that go into this being a recipe for success. And so I would stay focused on that. What are their other interests? Who are they? What do they like to do? Make sure that that's the focal point, that you're raising a well-rounded child. Their worth is not in sports. You'll hear that if we brought on every professional athlete that's ever played at the highest level, winning Super Bowls, you name it, they would all tell you that it will end and you will have to go on and do something else. And focus on that something else. Focus on the life plan of your child and how this fits in. So my big ones, they all fit in, but is your character, your integrity, and then you have to own it and you got to be disciplined in everything that you do. That is going to translate into work, school, you name it. So focus on who your child is, who they want to be, and how is sports one part of that is, I would say, my big advice.
Well said. Oh, you're on mute, Thomas.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Coach. Saving the day again. Nobody asked me, but I'm going to throw my 2 cents into the ring. And I think the NIL at the high school level is a big mistake, but it's here to stay. So it's important to have resources like Blueprint to Blue Chip, especially Coach John, to help navigate the uncharted waters of NIL at the high school level. Because I truly believe it's good. When someone talks about a blessing or a curse, I think this is a curse at the high school level. I think these kids need to focus on athletics. I think they need to focus on their academics and get to the collegiate level with a clear path, as opposed to the distraction of NIL. Because, Coach, you're right. I saw it too early on, when you have these athletes that have 3 or 4 or 5, a dozen offers, and you have these other athletes that aren't getting offers. It's going to, it's going to build a lot of dissension in the locker room, and this is just going to add to that, and it's going to compound to that. So, next week, we're going to be back to our original time and day, which is going to be Tuesdays at noon, where we will have a PowerPoint for you. What we really wanted to do today was the 3 of us kind of get together and sum up what happened on Monday, because I believe it's foreshadowing to what's to come. We are going to be in Texas, the 3 of us. We're going to be in Texas. We're going to be in Colorado here where we're at. We're also going to be in Utah. So any parting shots or any closing shots from you, Coach?
No, I think the biggest thing is, again, I can't say it enough and emphasize it enough to the high school administrators, athletic directors, coaches, specifically, this issue is real, and you need to get your head out of the sand and wake up to it. You need to have professionals like us come in and do the presentations for your families and for your staff to walk you through this, because we can answer those questions. We can take this off your plate and alleviate some of the headaches that you're gonna have through this process. But I think education is extremely important in this NIL process, and it's okay as an athletic administrator if you don't have the answers, because there are people out there who do. It's just, will you take the time to bring them in and have them do do the things necessary to help your program out. So it was a great opportunity in Arizona. Loved it. Thank you to the folks again in Queen Creek. It was an awesome experience, and I look forward to the next steps in that process.
Agreed. Thanks, Coach. Aaron, close us out. What are your closing thoughts?
I just stay focused on who you are, as parents, as athletes. That's the foundation. Money will come, but don't make that the focal point, because that will end up really destroying probably your child and not what you want. So stay focused on that. If the right opportunity presents itself, you're going to know it. You're going to take it, and you're going to use people like us to ensure that it's right for you, because we want to protect you. We want to help you guys do what's right, so that long term, it was a win.
All right. On that one, team, until next week, drive fast, take chances. We'll see you next week.
Obey the law.